Hello, everybody. It is Patrick McLain, as you know, one of your guest hosts for REIMAGINE 2020. You guys are watching this on Halloween. I'm still playing Mario. We still are just having amazing guests, actually. I can't believe how lucky we are to actually have these conversations. And I think everyone watching has really appreciated it. And so to continue on that trend, we're going to have another amazing guest. I might butcher his name, Paolo Ardoino. I think he described himself as, all right, CTO at Bitfinex, CTO of Tether. Paolo, how's your day? How's your week been?
Thank you, Patrick. My day has been great so far. Thank you very much for having me on the show today.
Yeah, of course. Wait, what's been the highlight of your week? I have to ask everybody this. For the last few days, what's been the highlight?
So actually pretty interesting new products on the derivative space. So we just listed a perpetual swap on silver that goes to increase our current portfolio of products from commodities, FX, equities. We are basically the first crypto exchange that really tries to move a bit outside of crypto. The competition is really hard and really strong, and we realized that instead of trying all to list all the same tokens as soon as they become available, there is a really big rush. As soon as a token comes available, everyone lists it, right? So we start thinking how we can differentiate ourselves from the competition, and we thought, okay, let's now we see the CME and other mainstream exchanges trying to move into crypto. Why we don't try to go outside of crypto a little bit? And we started listing a few weeks ago equities, perpetuals, and now the silver perpetual. We have gold. We have FX futures and things like that. So that is the highlight of my week so far. And today, of course, I have this amazing conversation with you.
Dude, I know who you are a little bit. The highlight of your week is something with work. So now I know why you're in such important roles. But you and I were talking a little bit before the call, and again, I think for whether thousands of students watching this or general person into crypto, I think it's important sometimes to understand how some of, and I think, Paolo, I don't know how you consider yourself, but I think probably a leader in the space, how you kind of what was your evolution into crypto? So I'll ask, it seems pretty clear to me that I'm a tech nerd. It seems like you're a tech nerd. Were you always into technology since you were a kid? And what was that evolution? What were maybe some of the first jobs you had, non-crypto, that you feel kind of, if you look back, were I could see how my evolution would kind of lead me here?
Well, briefly, I started coding at really young age, 9-10 years old, and then moved to university when I was 18 in computer science, math applied to computer science, and got involved in a cool research project there. Was building a high resilient network for military, for a foreign military entity. Then I realized that it was one of the best jobs I ever had, but wasn't really pay much, So I started looking around, and I thought, okay, finance is going to, of course, is much a better pay, right? So I started looking around and started working for some Swiss companies that had the need of building a portfolio management system, an internal portfolio management system. They were servicing clients, so they had stocks, equities, stocks, commodities, and futures, options. They had to track everything. So I built their internal system, and I thought, okay, now I can do this on a mass scale. So I moved to London. It was around 2012, 2013, and I started to build out my own company, and was about building this really complex, comprehensive portfolio management system for the broader finance. And on my day-to-day job, I had to fight with banks, with trading venues, because of course, in order to make it work, you had to aggregate and get all different types of data from banks, from all the trading venues, from custodians, from everywhere. And I was so annoyed because they were using all these outdated protocols and formats. Like you had to use SFTP, you could download the data only once per day. You have one window of 30 minutes, then they were deleting the data. So it was such a crazy and stupid way of doing things. And at the same time, I started looking, I came to read the Bitcoin white paper, and I suddenly realized that it could be the end of all my problems. So you are passing from a world where you have to download via FTP once per day some data, and then on the other side you have this perfect ledger that is immutable, and you can sync it from scratch whenever you want. You can validate; it will never change. And that made me realize that that could be a game changer for not only my small problem but the entire financial industry. So you could on Bitcoin as a store of value was an amazing idea. It's my preferred cryptocurrency because it's strong, it's immutable, it gives you power, right? You know that you own even a small bit of Bitcoin, and you feel good. You wake up in the morning, you know that no one ever be able to touch it. But at the same time, the blockchain technology is a great idea because it's solved many problems of coordination across companies. That is one of the biggest and most expensive problems in the financial industry, but also in the logistic industry. Every time that multiple companies are working together, they have to polish the data, they have to synchronize the data, they have to validate the data, and so on, right? So sometimes if the blockchain will ensure that the data is perfect, is clean, and you always net out. So that made me excited. And then month by month. Yeah.
Let me pause you there for a second. When did you read the Bitcoin white paper? When was it first on your radar?
It was around end of 2012, beginning 2013. And
you got it immediately, and you're like, I'm all in, or it took you some time to like jump in?
So I was all in on the technology, and I was a bit more cautious on the currency itself. It took me, I would say, a bit more time to understand it. I would say a few months more to really think through all the implication, also from the social point of view, because that's really the beauty of it, right? Then I come from a bit of an underground and profile, right? I started as in my, let's say, learning career. I always played with Linux kernel internals and did all kind of crazy stuff. And then at some point I understood that Bitcoin was basically the money for everyone, right? It was the money for the underground people, but also for the masses. But yeah, it took me a bit longer than. So first, I understood the technology. I understood the potential of the technology, across different use cases, and then I understood a few months later, still I would say in 2013, I really got into the cryptocurrency itself, the Bitcoin currency itself. But I didn't have, unfortunately, all the money that I wanted to invest. So little by little, I started stacking stats.
So then, like, when did you jump into it? Did you start joining like open source like communities to contribute, or did you get a job in the space? Like, other than purchasing it, I guess, what were your first steps in?
So I got really lucky, I must say. So I started, I'm in London. When I was in London, I met Giancarlo, that is the current CFO and of Bitfinex and Tether, and we got to talk. And he was involved in Bitfinex already, right? It was around end 2014. Bitfinex had it was an amazing platform. Was probably the first platform that allowed margin trading, shorting, and going long on leverage and so on. But they had a problem in terms of performance. So the matching engine was really slow. So it was still MySQL, so database driven, and that's exactly how you should never design your matching engine. And my expertise is in scalable application, parallel computing, and so on. So it was quite a good fit because we started talking, and I said, look, I can come. I have my own company, but I can come in as a consultant and try to help you guys. And you start working as a consultant. You start saying, okay, today I will devote 2 hours to the problem. And then after 1 week is 3 hours per day, and then become 5 hours per day. And it suddenly became 10 hours per day. And then I decided to completely shut down my company in London and fully go on board of Bitfinex in 2016.
Well, and like to those scalability issues, like had you seen how to solve some of those problems before, like in your previous work, like in kind of financial stuff? And do you feel like as you guys are building matching engines, as you're looking at data storage solutions, probably from MySQL or Redis, like how to handle logging, like, or probably centralization or distribution of servers, etc., like setting up infrastructure, was a lot of that process like already carved out, or do you feel like you guys were kind of like learning as you went? Like, were there really best practices, I guess?
Well, I must say that when I joined, there were no best practices. I have a quite long background, so I started bringing those practices inside Bitfinex as soon as I joined. We went from a situation from the matching engine was doing handling 50 trades per second to now it's hundreds of thousands, right? So it took years, right? I'm not a big fan of stepping in and start doing a parallel side project to trying to create something completely new from scratch that will take 2 years and then is a pain in the ass to integrate, sorry for the term. And so I usually prefer to squeeze everything that I can. Looking at the code, I'm quite good in understanding bottlenecks. So, when you can go multi-thread, you can swap out a matching a database for any memory storage with that flash to disk, or like that use a memory map file on the disk. So the solutions are for matching engines are pretty easy. If you think about a matching engine, it's like 2 binary trees, one for the bits, one for the asks. And then you have an input queue that can be TCP, can be UDP with multicast, and then you have an output queue. Of course, I'm simplifying the problem, but that's basically it. Then you have to ensure resiliency, and you have to ensure that you never lose data. That's the complex part. So, but behind the scenes, the machine engine is fairly easy. Then there is a lot of logic that, again, to ensure that you are not losing data. You can use Kafka, you can use Redis, you can use multiple solutions. I'm really a big fan of ZeroMQ, for example. So I'm trying to use everywhere I can. And over time, the machine engine evolved a lot, and also our data warehouse. Most of the time, I find that even companies that tend to have good matching engine then fail in the data recording, because you can have a matching engine that goes to 1 million orders per second. Then where the hell you are storing 1 million orders per second, right? You cannot do 1 million orders in a second instance on MySQL. That's basically a bit of secret sauce inside of our sharding techniques in our infrastructure as of today.
And I was going to ask about like physical infrastructure, as you say, infrastructure. But like, so I imagine over that time period, it's called 7 years. You've seen that evolve. Like, were you guys building or self-locating hardware? Then, like, obviously nowadays you could spin up Kafka servers or like to handle the logging or whatever. Like, has that changed a lot for you? Like, do you see the scale going much faster now?
So we started from a cloud solution. We were on AWS initially, And it's quite cool because, of course, well, it's probably the most used cloud in the world, right? So I don't have to explain much. But basically, the bottom line is you need one server, additional server. Fine, you can have it with one snap of the finger. But there are problems with that, in the sense that if you use AWS or any other cloud provider, it's really hard to predict the throughput of your network. So there are different components. So you can, if you forget about using shared instances, you have always to fully rent an entire instance. Otherwise, your CPU will become unpredictable. Then you have the block store. You can, in AWS, you can use the EBS, that is pretty fast, or SSDs, but you don't know exactly which SSDs they are using. You don't know exactly the type of RAID that they're using. Then if you use the block store, even if you use the IO one, that is the fastest one, it has bottlenecks. They throttle you. There are many issues that arise from that. Then imagine that you have to have one MySQL master and one slave, and they are writing to this like crazy or reading. Then if you're using a block storage, it's completely a mess, and the slave will start during the peaks of your infrastructure. The slave will start lagging behind the master. So we learned so many things from that. And also imagine that you have or your front-end servers and gateways, and then you have your databases, and you have your matching engine. So you are spinning all these new instances, but you never know exactly how distant one is from the other, how many hops there are one from one instance from another. So what we did in 2018 is we decided, okay, that's enough. We want to have predictable performance. We want to be able to choose our own machines. So we actually brought the entire Bitfinex infrastructure into a dedicated data center. We rented cabinets. We picked our server CPUs, these firewalls, switches, everything ourselves, and that made a huge difference.
Probably saves money too, right? I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah,
what AWS
an enormous amount of money. Because with the same amount of money, you can easily spend $100,000 per month in infrastructure. While of course there is the decay of the hardware that you have to take in account, but it's still with that. Consider the failures of your own hardware is, I would say, the overall costs are, you save 40-50% on the hardware.
Did you guys ever have security concerns at like where you're paying hardware providers versus that you have security over your own units, I guess? Like, did that change anything? Was that ever considered?
Yeah, of course. So when you order hardware, you don't want to wave your hand and say, look, I'm this cool crypto exchange, and so I'm getting new hardware from you, vendor, because that's a really bad practice. So you try always to make sure that the vendor doesn't get doesn't get your name directly. So you use basically people that you trust or companies that you can trust in order to make sure that no one can inject weird chips on your motherboard before shipping it to you. And then
attacks via supply chain are the craziest ones now. Like I don't think people understand. Like if you actually research them, like because they X-ray all the motherboards and just the techniques that go in from just missing lessons, rice grain chips that are just kicking everything out to one IP address, or even if they can't get you there, putting something that gets powered by the Ethernet cable, right? I mean, even attacking like the cabling is actually a pretty big thing. But I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I've been reading a lot about it lately.
Yeah, I mean, that is a really a big concern. I would have the same concern with the cloud instances, right? There was a point where there was an attack vector that was allowing, if I'm not wrong, from one virtual machine, you could really try to in certain condition to read the memory from another used by another virtual machine. So there are always issues like that you have to be completely aware and trying to protect as much as you can. Of course, then you get the hardware, you install it yourself. You don't get, we don't use remote hands. We always have to go on site. The platform and the infrastructure is redundant. So if one thing breaks, you really don't want to use remote hands. Plus the cabinets have their own camera and so on.
Got it. Well, I don't want to go too far down this path. It is Halloween themed, so we'll talk about the scariness and security. But hey, I want to kind of go back a minute. So 2013, you read the white paper. You obviously have like pretty strong technical background. You start to explore fintech, however you want to define it a little bit. You see some of the complications. This is kind of signaling to you, or you're quickly able to identify maybe benefits of Bitcoin or other blockchain technologies. So then, if I'm not missing anything, your first job was Bitfinex in crypto?
My first job in crypto was Bitfinex, yes, correct.
And you never left. You've been CTO. You started as CTO,
Yeah.
or?
No, I started. I stepped in trying to help the former CTO with the matching engine, and then in 2016, in mid 2016, the hack happened. Bitfinex hack happened. So I was asked to step in as new CTO, and I decided that was the type of challenge that I liked. So I started in mid 2016 to be the CTO of Bitfinex.
And how does one take that challenge? You're like, this hack just happened. I got this, guys. That's like you kind of put the target on your back, right? Like you kind of like can already see that it could get bad, right? Like no one wants to get that call at 3 a.m. or some shit, right? Like, so like, what was that like? Like taking the reins at that moment in time?
Well, at some point you feel the duty to not let your customers down. I believe that that's part of being of myself. If there is a challenge, if there are people that were affected, I would never let them down, even if I was still an outsider at that point. But I decided that I was in the best position to bring this company back on the technical side and bring into what it is today. And plus, was the best job I ever had. I would never have quit. Both on the teammates, on the management, the customers. I mean, was such a hard time, but also we have seen the team rolling up their sleeves. Everyone was so committed in fixing the situation and going back on track, and we became again the biggest trading platform in the world. I would say in few months we were top one for trading volume again. We got a crazy 2017 and 2018, an enormous amount of new customers. I believe that Bitfinex story is an amazing story. A story of dedication, a story of simple people that really work tirelessly. I mean, myself, I don't count the hours day and night that I work. It's years that I don't sleep much or almost at all, or like more than 1 or 2 hours continued. But I don't care, and there are many in our company that do like this.
Well, I'm becoming a fan. You seem like a good guy. I mean, it's hard to do that, right? Like it's hard to stand up, I think, sometimes, and do the right thing, or like really like sacrifice yourself, right? Maybe sometimes to build something bigger. And maybe it's not a sacrifice always, right? A lot of people enjoy this. Like I can say even from our team, like have a bunch of like people that I think sometimes people don't understand. Like you find like the real hacker culture, like nah, like we're gonna finish this and not sleep. Like we need some Red Bulls, and like people don't need that much sleep. But hey, so can you tell me like what? So you come in and then like what would you say were like maybe 2-3 key points that you tried to implement when you thought about like, okay, this is how I want to maybe change the technical product. This is how I want to ensure that this hack doesn't happen again, or I really like this company, and I'm sure you probably weren't thinking 6 months out. It sounds like you were thinking 10 years out, 20 years out. How did you kind of once you took the reins? How did you approach that?
Sure. So I think that one of the problems in general is I would say creating complex code bases and monolithic code bases. One of my preferred books is The Cathedral and Bazaar from Eric S. Raymond. So it talks about the beauty of the cathedral, right? Such a complex structure, and from the outside it's beautiful. Then, but is if something breaks, the entire cathedral risks to fall down. While a bazaar from the outside might seem a mess, right? You see people running around, there are a lot of different people sending stuff, a lot of clients going around, getting new stuff, buying stuff from the sellers. And that's basically, in simple ways, a really good analogy for the microservices system, right? So I learned over time in my past career that monolithic architecture should be always avoided. So what I did is, and I always looked really interested into the microservices solutions that were available, but no one really, I didn't like any, honestly. You have gRPC, you have so many different microservices architectures that are quite complex, and they really force you to build things in that specific way. So the first thing that I did in the company is to build our own microservices system that is called Grenache. It's still being used today. It's, I would say, less than 1,000 lines of code, and is basically a way to distribute microservices over a DHT network, like a BitTorrent network. So you are a coffee maker, so you advertise on the network that you are a coffee maker, and I want a coffee, so I can query in the same way you can query, who on the BitTorrent network is sharing a movie, and you get their IPs and ports to connect to in a peer-to-peer fashion. In this way, the clients know where all the IPs of the services that are offering a particular microservice. So you have this internal network that can be, you can authenticate it or you can not authenticate it, and so on, different depending on the different services. And you spin up a new service, and boom, works. And the good thing about it is that as BitTorrent offers you an intrinsic resiliency due to the fact that it's, if you are downloading a movie from 100 different people, if one goes down, there are 99 left, right? So in the same way, our microservices system work exactly in that way. So one can go away, and there are other microservices that offer the same service that are still alive. So clients will get can always look up for a fresh list of IP addresses offering that particular service. So long story short, that allow us to split our code base in 400 different microservices, offering all segregated, all super small. With we encapsulated everything in that system. Until today, it is super scalable, super resilient, works well. Low maintenance. I believe that now that it's stable, we do a few comments per year on that code base, because again, it works really well. So that is what I did as soon as I stepped in. Moving from a complete monolithic architecture to a microservices oriented architecture that we design for this specific purpose.
I think especially when you're trying to process many parallel tasks at the same time, right? I mean, it's people tend to save time when they first build a product and not think longer term, and then you have to usually go out and rip a bunch of stuff out. So I think before we go too deep on the tech side, because I'm loving this conversation actually. All right, so I think I'm getting us up to 2016, and you take over Bitfinex CTO to this day. Where does, as we talked about earlier, you're also CTO of Tether. Where does that come from? How did that come into play?
So I became CTO in Tether in 2017. I think that Tether needed to grow and scale on different directions. So in 2017 was the year where Tether started to grow like crazy. So the demand of Tether started to grow. Many exchanges started supporting Tether. So we had to have a long-term strategy in terms of the technology, of the security of Tether. So I think in November, December 2017, I became the CTO there. And I was asked, of course, to become the CTO there. And what I did was, okay, was starting looking at the different blockchains and
all right, hang on, let me pause you for 1 second. So you're like, so we can give like the Elon Musk example where he's like sleeping on the factory floor, like maybe has burnout, is like Tesla, SpaceX. I mean, and again, like not everybody watching this understands the scale of what Paolo's saying. Like these are two very big and prominent companies in the crypto space. So you asked to be the CTO of also Tether, and like how do you address that? Like you like, you just like, you have no fear, you're like, I'll just sleep less, or like how did you approach that mentally? Like
I think that I'm really good in multitasking and creating silos in my head. So someone is making fun of me on Twitter because in one passive interview I said that I only code on one laptop with one single screen, right? Because that is, I believe that is really important, at least for my mind, right? Context switching also is a mental problem, right? If you have 10 different monitors, you context switch every time you see a notification, every time you see something on 2, 3, 4 different monitors, you will look at it, you will get distracted, and so your brain will fatigue more because it has to context switch to that thing, and then maybe that thing is not important in that moment, so you have to context switch back and so on, right? It's pretty similar to a CPU with the caches internally. And so basically I'm really good in focusing on one problem, solving the problem, moving to the next one. I have a pile of problems every day, and I will never go to sleep without solving them all, right? I start really fresh in the morning, then I start solving problems and answering to people, coding. I trying to code at least 80-90% of my time. And then I don't like to micromanage people. I only hire really good developers. And then basically at night, I go to sleep around 1 o'clock in the night, and then I leave my phone on because traders can write me. I wake up every hour or so and just and I reply to them and go back to sleep and so on. So I mean, I'm trained to do that. I sometimes, I train also a bit physically to do that. It can be stressful in stressful moments, but I believe that if you are, I don't think, I'm a Superman. I'm just committed enough in order to take on, and I'm really resilient to stress. So if there are many concurrent critical situations, I'm quite good in managing all of them.
So you silo. You're saying like you made a very clear wall. You're like, anything Tether I'm gonna do over here on this time. I'm gonna cut out these other notifications. I'm gonna focus on this. I think I'll be able to handle it. And here's how I'm gonna balance my time. So then, like, what started to fill up into that silo? Like, what did that start to take more of your time than you thought? Like, was there ever a point you had to rebalance or?
No, I think that Tether on the technical side is, it requires, it's quite complex because now you are, we are sitting on $16 billion. So, but it really, the complexity sits on ensuring that you are following the perfect and best practices for each blockchain you are dealing with. Right, we started with Omni, then we had Ethereum, Tron, EOS, Algorand, Liquid. We are working with Solana and Bitcoin Cash and many others. So for each one of them, you have to review the entire stack. You have to look through the audits. You have to work with your team to to establish the best practices, you have to establish the procedure for multi-sig, for issuance, redemptions, everything, right? So, but as long as you organize, I think is definitely manageable. Then, of course, you have to be 100% aware of any issue that each blockchain might have over time, right? Maybe let's say that you support Ethereum Classic and they go through a hard fork. You have to make sure that they don't double spend your token. So there are all these things, all these concerns. And of course, I have a team of trusted people that work with me in order to, we have really amazing developers, really super talented developers. So I just like to, to work with them and to be and to handle these problems myself, but also I have a great team that helps me.
All about the great team, dude. I bet you. I'm telling you, you just made a fan today. I didn't know. I knew a little bit about you. I watched and listened to a little bit about you, but I see even talking to you, like maybe some of your core principles are about like hard work, teamwork, supporting the people around you. And I think for anyone watching, whether you're starting a company or starting your career, what Paolo is saying is probably some of the attributes that you want to try to mirror as you go forward. So before I throw too much of that on you, and I want to pivot here to kind of your general state of the union. Like I think you probably have a unique view of the crypto market, and there's any other aspects of life that you maybe want to wrap up. But I think kind of closing out this part. So I think you have a unique perspective. Like obviously, I'm going to assume that you tinker around with like a lot of technology and a lot of crypto technology. Obviously, I think exchanges touch a lot of it because whether it's smart contracts or syncing nodes, all the complications there, unique aspects to each protocol, etc. So you probably naturally touch a lot of things. And I think even what my team has seen or what I've seen is that a lot of tooling for crypto development has really caught up over the last few years. So like, what do you still think the big gaps are there? And like, if you were going to start like a developer or infrastructure type company to like assist crypto, and you have to give me your best idea if you have one, but like, what would you start today? Like if you're a kid in college or working on a startup?
That's really an interesting question. So I think that Bitcoin in general, well, crypto space in general has still a bit of user experience issue. So I would say user experience and onboarding is probably one of the critical parts that I would focus on probably. On the more core aspects, I would say that, well, my dream job when I have and I will ever have some spare time is to do a real DEX. When I see the current DEXes, I really, from the technical point of view, I cannot breathe, right? I get my brain itchy. I really have an hard time to digest what I'm seeing around. I believe that DEXs should be like pure peer-to-peer. Should be, not relying on a single blockchain. Should be, I would love to see a technology that bring DEXs in. You have a small DEX in your hometown. I have a small DEX in my hometown. Maybe market makers will synchronize them between one and each other. I mean, a super decentralized in the true meaning of decentralization DEX, right? You want to have a BitTorrent-like DEX. You don't want to have one single blockchain where there is one central smart contract that execute a bunch of orders type of DEX. So I like really that aspect. I'm as the fun part of the blockchain and the super resiliency in the post-atomic world, if I have to pick something really crazy. Otherwise, I would say more on the, let's say, on the real requirements of the Bitcoin industry is find neat ways to onboard more people, find ways to explain to outsider, that can be e-commerces, that can be travel agencies, that can be anyone like restaurants that accept takeaways on online, and so on, how to integrate Bitcoin, how to integrate cryptocurrencies, how to use them, why they should use them, right? And I believe you are doing an amazing job in the education, and also I believe that there should be more starter kits. I'm Italian. If I go in Italy, maybe a lot of people heard about Bitcoin, but no one of them know how to start, how they can accept Bitcoin in their day-to-day business. So that's really the part I would focus more on.
Actually, it's funny you say that, because like what we started giving to schools for a while, we called them like a starter kit, like club banner, t-shirts, like maybe like a box to run a node, right? Or like just everything they need to actually like shorten development time or get their hands dirty, whether you look at it from the developer level. And I think even what you're saying on the university side, there's some interesting things, what they can even deploy at the university level, right? Like maybe they can accept payments on campus or identity, etc. Like they actually have a playground in correspondence to kind of deploy all aspects. So definitely hear what you're saying there. For anyone that doesn't know, Paolo let me delay 30 minutes. I feel very lucky about that. I had like another interview run over, and I know our time's kind of pushing here a bit, so I wanted to make sure to respect it. But I think this last part, and this is the part I'm actually very curious from, just because you see this from so many sides. Like, what's the Paolo Ardoino? I know I probably butchered that. Like, what's your crypto and like world state of the union right now? And I'll just say, like, obviously this week is crazy. Everybody will be watching this on Halloween. Today is October 27th. Bitcoin's gone up crazy. When you look out, and I don't know how you look out. Like, do you look out 6 months at this point, a year, 5 years? What do you see? Like, what worries you? What excites you? Either whether it could be political, government regulation, Bitcoin pricing. So yeah, I don't. Before I talk too much, what's your state of the union? What would you say about the space?
So I think that the space grew a lot since 2013 when I started to be involved. I must say that sometimes I miss how it was in the early years, because it was a bit more underground from a certain point of views, and it's not a good thing in the sense that we are all fighting for mass adoption. I believe that is our key goal, but at the same time, I think that I miss when people were working a bit more genuinely on the technology. Now I see that there is a lot of competition, a gazillion new blockchains, and many projects that in some way are looking similarly to 2017, where there is more marketing than substance. So that is the bad part. It started from the bad parts, right? Then the good part, I believe that Bitcoin and general crypto system will make the difference in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 20 years from now. I believe that our generation is lucky to be part of this 1 in 100 years opportunity where you can actually participate to change how the entire financial ecosystem was built on and perceived. And you can actually, if the work of everyone of us is successful, now we are, I believe, hundreds of thousands of people working in the crypto industry, we can really solve one of the biggest problems of this world, that is the number of unbanked people. So that is really what excites me, right? The ability of having people taking control of their own wealth, being able to save some funds that no one can ever touch those for their kids when they go to university, to invest to invest in their career and so on. I believe that Bitcoin has that big opportunity, and I think many of us are working towards that direction. So it's more, I believe it's quite a social movement now, and I believe that it will end up in helping billions of people in staying better and living better.
I lied. One more question. For any students watching right now that are like, should I get into blockchain? Like, what do I do with my career? I'm a computer engineer, or I'm in business. If you were in school today, how would you think about it? Like, what would change for you? Like, what would be the small advice you would give them?
Well, first of all, I would knock on the door of my professors and say, why we are not running a Bitcoin node? Why we cannot do an hackathon, internal hackathon on Lightning Network? So let us play with it. There are so much funding wasted in universities that, I mean, investing on a Raspberry Pi and a couple of Raspberry Pis is super cheap. And most of the time, unfortunately, professors are not up to speed with blockchain. And I believe so students should really knock on their doors and say, look, this is something that is going to change our world. So please, next year, let's have a course in our university or in high school about blockchain. Let's do that. And maybe students, you should help your professors to understand the space a bit better, so they can help you then, and they can advocate Bitcoin in the school organization.
Sorry, I'm talking to you, and I'll cut this part out. Just one of my video feeds cut, but all right. Well, I'll clip it back here. Paolo, I think like you're an amazing dude, to be honest. Like you just inspired me today a little bit. Like I actually see like unselfishness and like in you, and I think you actually just want to build pretty cool stuff in the blockchain ecosystem. So like thank you again for making the time here. Any last words before we go?
Well, just it's a pleasure to have been here. Education is really kudos to you. Education is one of the most important things in our space and everywhere. If I had in the future some time, I would really devote myself to teaching and educating people. It's so thank you very much for doing that, and thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, no.
Have a good
100%.
one, Patrick.
Yeah, I'll take us out here. But everybody watching, I don't know what point we are in the 72 hours. I know it's Halloween for you guys. Reimagine 2020 version 4. Paolo Ardoino, I know I'm butchering that. Patrick McLain, you guys all have a good night. Thanks, Paolo.
Thank you. Have a good night.